Thank you, everybody, for joining us back here at GCAC's channel. We have another special guest for you guys. We sit here with Gabriel Dion, the founder and publisher of Medicate Ohio, which is a partner of GCAC. Gabrielle, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, very good to have you on. Very glad to get to talk to you. And I'm real curious about your path, so to speak, how you wound up where you are today, and a bit about the origins of Medicate Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Medicaid Ohio actually didn't start in Ohio. It started across the country in Las Vegas in 2016. I was a medical patient. I had had my first back surgery, had a foot surgery just a few months later, and was heading into my third back surgery. Had become very addicted to Vicodin, which was what I was taking for pain medicine, taking nearly 20 a day, and it had really become a problem. And my surgeon out there in Nevada had recommended I try medical cannabis, which had just become legal for medical patients out there at that time.
Mhm.
And I was reluctant because I didn't think anything was going to help me at that point. Very, very heavy in the victim mentality. And I went to a dispensary. Uh, was embarrassed that I didn't know anything about cannabis, and just asked for a couple of joints because that's all I really knew about. And they gave me the joints. I went home. I tried to smoke them, and I started coughing. My back hurt terribly. Threw them away. Didn't think another thing of it. Figured this wasn't going to work. And then my pain medicine ran out again, which it did often, and it ran out more and more often.
Mhm.
And I went back to a different dispensary and had a wholly different experience. This was in Nevada at the Source dispensary out there. And when I went there, I talked with a woman who was about my age, and she also had physical ailments, and taught me a lot about edibles and the endocannabinoid system. And it was eye-opening. And I went home, I tried the edibles, and not right away, but throughout that summer, I felt like, wow, this could really be something to help me.
Wow.
And I moved back home to Ohio because the opiate addiction, along with a lot of other things, had ruined my marriage, and I decided to come back home after divorce and start over here in Ohio. And but what I took with me was the knowledge that cannabis might be able to help me in a way that opiates couldn't. And in January of 2019, when Ohio started their medical marijuana program, I was one of the first people to join. And in July 2019, I took my last opiate pill, and I've been over 3.5 years now, green and sober, as they say.
Well, Gabby, one thing about that is that story is unfortunately common in terms of how people wind up on painkillers or opiates. It's largely due to just life circumstances, and then that being the go-to prescription, in which in a lot of cases, yes, people are pain, they need something to treat that pain, but unfortunately, it has been a double-edged sword that has cleaved through this entire country. And glad to see that you've came out the other side of it. And on top of coming out the other side of it, you've kind of taken that knowledge from the suffering and the lessons you've learned and tried to bring it back here and teach it to those people. So now dive a little bit more into what you actually handle with Medicate Ohio. Talk to me about your guys' mission and what you guys accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, I took what I learned from my time in Nevada back here, and really wanted to involve myself in the program. And I built Medicaid Ohio with a couple of other patients and a few non-patients who were passionate about advocacy in this area, and who also had skills in journalism and so forth, and design and things like that. So we started in June of 2019 was when we launched. And we just started telling stories. We didn't really know how we were going to pay for this thing, how it was going to all pan out,
Mhm.
but we knew that these stories needed to be told. and we began to just immerse ourselves in the program and go to the the advisory board meetings as they were developing the rules and so forth of the program, so that we could learn the landscape, and then be able to report that back to patients. So that's been a big part of our journey. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. We had decided about 6 to 8 months into reporting that it would make sense for us to develop as a nonprofit organization, much like NPR, some of the bigger journalism nonprofits. We really wanted to follow that model because we weren't looking to make a quick buck. We really just wanted to tell these stories and to produce pieces that promoted advocacy. And so we did that. But then the pandemic hit, of course, and we just kind of kept doing the work anyway. But during that time, I also was able to meet a lot of partners that made MedicateOH really possible. One of which was Duber Medical, who I still write a weekly column for that MedicateOH also publishes. And it really does. It helps us to tell these stories of the program, and in a way that partners us with one of the medical marijuana doctors. And through that partnership, we made several other partnerships, and now we have several clients that we work with throughout Ohio to report on the different work that they are doing, and the different products that are coming out, different dispensaries that are opening. We've got 70 some dispensaries that are going to be open in the coming year. So we just want to report on the program, and we're lucky enough now to have a lot of partners in the community that are helping us to support us to continue telling these stories. One of which is GCAC.
It's exactly what I was going to ask you. Speaking of partnerships, let's wrap it all the way back around to GCAC. Talk to me about what you guys would work with them, and what really drew you in to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I met GCAC Steve Peterson a little over, I guess it was about a year and a half ago now, when we were both involved with a nonprofit called Cannabis Can. And Cannabis Can was attempting to solve the waste problem in the industry. And as we were getting into it, we learned how much bigger the regulation issue was to, and what a big part of sustainability and regulation all tie together, because there were so many things that stopped us from being able to implement just a simple recycling program for the Ohio program. And so, taking that story alone, and building that out to so many other stories, and connecting with GCAC was so important, because they are really a solutions-driven company that is looking for ways to do things like, hey, if you have a recycling problem, that's a story that they can tell if there's a recycling solution that they have come up with, or some other sustainability solution. All of these areas of ESG that we talk about that people care about. You talk about, you go into a dispensary and you're handed a menu, and there's 50 or 60 different companies that you've never heard of. How are you going to select between those companies? And what GCAC is doing is putting QR codes on there that would, on the product itself, that would tell you all of the information about the company that you're about to buy a product from. More than just what you see now, which is like a COA. which can tell you some details, you know, the THC percentage, the terpenes, you know, possibly even the way it was grown. But what GCAC is doing is really taking that and utilizing the blockchain in order to really expand all of that knowledge. And you know, I envision products where you're telling the whole story. You know, you're finding out, you know, how, you know, what kind of grow medium do they use? What pesticides are they using in their grow? How, you know, what is their record compared to others on environmental things? Like how much are they wasting? How, you know, did they recently have a product packaging change that, you know, is going to save thousands of dollars and thousands of you know, trees.
Yeah.
Those are also such important things, and
Agreed.
it's neat to be able to tell those stories with them.
And those are all things that the consumers and people and even investors now are all seeking to know as well. So it's heavily incentivized by social and eventually kind of getting into governmental pressures too. So, and from there, you had also talked about sustainability a little bit and talking about how off camera you had mentioned how this can actually enrich the experience of business and working with people and so on, as well as learning more about it. Can you dive into that just a little bit more as the final point we cover?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such an important thing, especially in the cannabis industry, because it is an industry based around a natural plant that is should be a renewable resource that people you know, that people are loving and fostering. And what I think telling these stories really does is it tells people, it gives people an idea of who's doing the best in the industry in terms of you know, in terms of making good decisions that that the patients and the consumers can feel good about.
Mhm.
And I think when you know, when we partner with companies like GCAC, um, we can see more of the industry. We can see things like sustainability. You know, who's doing something with sustainability. You know, that's sustainable. That we can see who's doing these best practices, and then I can go to another company, and then I can you know, find out what they're doing. And with the idea of storytelling that's so important too is it brings those different ends of the spectrum together. It brings a company who's doing something really well together with someone who maybe is having some challenges that they can learn from this other company. And that's really important. And I think that when we learn about those things, it just enriches all of us in the industry to do better and propels us all to perform with you know, with good intentions and with the best practices in mind.
Yeah, very well said, Gabby. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on and introducing yourself and Medicate Ohio. And I do implore anybody, if they have questions, to not be afraid to reach out and ask. But Gabby, do you have any closing words for people before we go?
Yeah, I would love to tell folks that Medicaid Ohio, if you have products in the Ohio market, or you know, are opening whatever you're doing in the Ohio market, we'd love to hear about it. We tell a lot of the stories in the industry, and we want to continue doing so. So please, if anyone's listening who would like to talk further, feel free to reach out to me at Gabrielle at MedicateOH.com.
Perfect. Well, Gabby, thank you so much for your time today, and please have a wonderful
Thank
day.
you. Thanks a lot.